Hello there and welcome back. So today we're going to venture off to the nose, and I read in one of the comments from earlier back when I was painting the underpainting that the nose could get a little bit longer than I had before, so we're going to make that correction, and we're also going to push the effect of form using simplistic color for the nose. And so the color palette that I'm using today is the same exact one that I had yesterday when I was developing the form for this eye. So I did go ahead and paint the other eye on my own, just so I wouldn't have to show you footage of the same exact thing being done over again. And if you want to know how this eye was painted in the underpainting, I did film that for that segment of the underpainting. So for the nose, let's go ahead and get a different brush. So let's just get any old color off the palette. Again, these are the same colors that I had mixed up on the palette in yesterday's video when we developed the form for this eye. First thing we want to do is take note of what changes we want to make. So we're going to just pull the nose a little bit further down. So I'm actually going to start off with the color and pushing the nose down a little bit. So the first thing was to take something from here, paint in a little shape for the dark light of the nose. So we are going to be kind of multitasking a little bit. So we're going to be pushing this shape down ever so slightly. And we're also going to be developing the form. So let's say pushing it down to about there. And again, it's going to be a really small change. I don't want to move the nose that far down. And again, I'm using the center of the bulb of the nose to push it down. So let's go ahead and push this down as well. Just a little bit. Don't need to push it that much. At least I don't think. So I'm going to go ahead and get something from here for the cast shadow. A little bit of burnt umber ultramarine blue. So if you missed yesterday's video, I'm going to go ahead and list out the color palette for you. So we have titanium white, flake white, burnt umber, alizarin permanent, cadmium red medium, yellow ochre, sap green, ultramarine blue, and ivory black. So I think this value is about all right for the cast shadow. So we had to move this down. So now we're going to have to move this shape down. But while we're doing it, we're also going to add color. So a little bit down, pushing the shape down a little bit. Don't need much. And if you're new to this channel and you want to know exactly what materials I'm using, you can always go ahead and scroll down to the description box below, and all of that information will be typed up for you. So now that I've moved that shadow down a little bit, the next thing I want to do is reassess the root of the nose, the bottom portion of the nose. So again, we are making these corrections with color. So in this little middle tone region of the palette, I'm mixing up a little bit of cadmium red medium. So again, just like I did with the underpainting, I'm going to be splitting up the footage for the first color pass so that you can see it develop throughout the week, or I guess throughout, a 3 or 4 day period. Just so I don't overwhelm you with too much footage. So we're going to have to push this shape down as well. Now, if you think about a Rembrandt painting, the nose, you'll notice in a Rembrandt, can be pushed to the most simplistic brush strokes. And so even though this is a much longer process than, say, alla prima, Rembrandt, I'm pretty sure, did not work in alla prima. Now, don't quote me on that. I did try to do a Rembrandt master copy a while ago, which everyone, I think most people were appreciative of it. Lots of people hated it. I tried to paint it in alla prima style. Now, if I were to attempt another Rembrandt master copy, this is the process that I would use, simply because it just allows more time to create further refinements. But anyway, I'm getting off topic. The thing about a Rembrandt painting that is so astounding is that he simplifies an area like this right here into a single brush stroke. So let's go ahead and try to do that. So a little bit of cadmium red. Let's go ahead and do that right there. That's the brush stroke that I was talking about. Don't know if it's in the right place, but we're getting there. We're going to go ahead and put that same red down here. So the purpose of the first color pass is to prioritize, again, value and drawing. The only thing is now we have an advantage by placing or by superimposing color on top of a monochromatic underpainting. And that is the juxtaposition of color on top of a monochromatic underpainting kind of gives your eye another viewpoint, another type of advantage, if you will, in terms of your observation, the power of your observation. So we're going to make it a little darker here for the nostril. So the advantage in working in layers like this is each day you get to see it almost with a completely new mindset. So I'm going to go ahead and push this value a little bit darker. So I'm going to use cadmium red medium into this darker region of the palette, right over here. I'll push it a little bit darker. So I think that's about good for pushing the nose down. Now we're going to go into the colors and the values for the nose. And again, we're going to try to minimize the bright colors, and we're going to try to focus more into the local colors, the local color being the average color that you would be seeing. So again, if you missed the color study, I did a color study for this portrait a couple days ago, uploaded it a couple days ago. In there, I introduced kind of the thinking process that goes into mixing color for certain spots of color. So I would definitely recommend checking that out. But for now, I'm going to be pushing this plane change here. So this is going to be the side plane of the nose, exactly like we did in the underpainting. The only thing is I'm adding a little bit more warmth into this region here. So right here is the furthest point that turns away from the light. So right over here, this area is turning away from the light. So it's going to get a little bit darker, and it's going to be a little lighter over here. Right over there. And then there's going to be a very subtle drop in value and chroma right around here for the side of the nose. And then we're going to go ahead and mix a little more of the yellow ochre, cadmium red medium, titanium white, a little bit of flake white, and so we're going to go ahead and paint in this little area here. I'm going to add a little bit of medium just to thin out the paint. And the medium I'm using is Neo McGilp. It's kind of my favorite medium to use these days. All right, so we're going to be looking at the structure for the bulb of the nose and the color. So the color is going to be a little bit warmer. So I'm going to anticipate the next layer, so the second color pass. So what I mean by anticipate the next pass is that I'm going to push these values a little bit lighter so that I can build a transparency. So I can anticipate a transparent layering of color for the next pass. So for instance, I'm going to try to push these lights a little bit brighter than I see them, so that when that dries, I'll be able to come and paint over top of it with kind of like a warmer alizarin type of mixture and kind of let this show through like a type of stained glass effect. So a little bit lighter over here. And so the side of the nose, this area is going to be super subtle. And to obtain that subtlety, just like we did with the underpainting, all we're going to do is push the values as close to each other as we possibly can, yet maintain the differentiation between them. So here's the value for the side of the nose. And now we're going to put the value for the top of the nose. Now this area is going to be lighter. It's going to be brighter than, say, that area, but it's also going to be super close. Really, really close in value. And so again, the juxtaposition of the color onto the monochromatic underpainting is also giving me an advantage in this subtle shift, because all I need to do is shift this light by adding a little more paint than, say, this area. So I'll show you what I mean. Watch this. So we're going to press a little bit harder onto this area, a little bit lighter onto here with the same color. We can create almost a magical shift in color and in value, of course. So now it's just a matter of softening these edges. So right over here, trying to shift the edge ever so slightly, trying to make it extremely soft. There are many ways to soften an edge. You can go and blend with a very soft brush, or you can go value per value and get them as close to one another as possible. I'm kind of using a mixture of them. I know this is a soft brush, so I keep painting in a plane and then softening it. So for instance, let's go ahead and put this plane in here. Plane change, and then softening it. You can kind of think of this as blending. It's okay. Now, the next thing I'm going to do is put in the highlight. Now the highlight is going to be moved down a little bit because we did move the nose down a tiny bit. And again, the characteristic of the bulb of the nose on this model is less round, so it's less round and a little more triangular. So one of the things I think I forgot to mention with the underpainting of the nose is that the nose in particular, I find it's important, I think, to take note of our own nose. So for instance, my nose is rather round. The bulb of my nose is rather round. And I think one of my tendencies is to round out noses in the models that I paint. And it's a natural tendency to kind of accidentally put in some of your own likeness into a portrait you're painting, but that's not what I want to do. So I think it's important to take note of the characteristics of your own features and watch out for accidentally painting your own characteristics on the portraits that you're painting. Just be on the lookout. So for instance, I'm on the lookout for, I'm trying not to round out the nose too much. And this is what I mean by not rounding it. I'm trying to create a very distinct edge here. See this? How it's a little bit sharper? I don't want it to get overly soft, because if it becomes overly soft here, then I lose the kind of the triangular shape of the model's nose. So again, we're going to be pushing these plane changes even further than we had in the underpainting. And just like I said yesterday, think about the first color pass as building onto the underpainting. And we're going to do the same thing when we get into the second color pass. We're going to think about it as a building process. Just something goes on, at least in my mind, if somebody tells me, are you going to paint over your underpainting? I don't like the word painting over the underpainting. I like to think that I'm building onto the underpainting. So we're going to push this plane change even more now. So just like we did with the eye yesterday, once we got all the information in there for the description of the structure, then it becomes time to push the form. So now we're going to try to push the form even further perhaps than we see it on the photo reference. So how do we push the form? So let's start out over here. So usually the cast shadow, so here's a cast shadow. This is a shadow right here being casted by the nose. Usually the cast shadow is going to be a little bit darker than the form shadow. So we're going to go ahead and push that difference even more right over here. We're going to push that difference even more especially over here. Let's get some cadmium red medium. Cadmium red medium is a little bit lighter in value than the alizarin permanent, so that's why I'm using it to add warmth and to also lighten in value, just slightly though. Right over here. And I guess over here as well. Then we're going to go back into the dark. So I'm going to use a little bit of ultramarine blue, alizarin permanent, and a tiny bit of cadmium red to push this change in value. Very, very subtle. The next thing we're going to do to try to push the illusion of form is to further is to add further specificity onto this little band-aid line. I like to think of this, or call this kind of a band-aid line. Imagine a band-aid wrapping around the nose. Imagine the shape that it would make. And so what I mean is that I'm going to group this value together with this value. This is what I mean. So I'm moving the band-aid line a little bit higher up towards the nasal bone. And the nasal bone is basically where the nose starts. So the total length of the nose can be measured from the nasal bone down to the root of the nose. So I'm just going to group this little band-aid line here with the nasal bone. And with a very, very light touch, we're kind of just whispering the paint onto the surface to try to get a very clean plane change. Now, another thing is to beware of the limitations of the photo reference. So this is why I'm explaining the value transitions that I'm making in terms of forms, physical three-dimensional forms, and not just trying to copy down exactly what I'm looking at with the photo reference. So we're going to soften that little transition now. So the form, so the illusion of form that we're trying to create is a very subtle change from light, kind of light, dark, a little bit darker, just a little bit darker, and then really dark down there. Very, very subtle transitions in value. Now I'm thinking with the second color pass, I'll probably go and push a little more of the warmth into the nose. But for now, I'm going to see what I can do with just the Flake white and the Cadmium red medium just to get us going. So for instance, right here, wait, a little darker. So right here, a little bit of warmth, and also trying to further delineate this plane, further describe this plane. And so I think that's going to be about it for the development of the nose using simple color. So again, today what we did was we fixed a little drawing mistake by moving the root of the nose down ever so slightly, probably even, I don't know, the width of the brush, this part of the brush. And so I think it looks a little bit better, and I think it's ready for the second part for the nose, which will be the second color pass. But in tomorrow's video, we're going to venture off down towards the mouth. And I think there's another little drawing thing that I might want to correct with the mouth, and at the same time bring out the illusion of form using simplistic color. So I really hope that this video helps you out. I wish you the best in all of your artwork, and of course I'll see you again in another 24 hours.